Hi everyone, and welcome to another Thriver TV episode. And we have a Thriver show, and what's really exciting is that I'm now going to be filming live some Thriver shows so that you can get to see the lovely Thrivers and really feel their energy in person, which I think is important. And I have the lovely Kerry here with me today. Welcome, Kerry.
Thank you for having me, Melanie.
Oh, it's just, I'm going to love this show. This is amazing. And I actually put up on Facebook yesterday that we were going to be doing this show live. And there has been more responses in regard to this Thriver show than I have ever had about any Thriver show that was going to be released. And the responses have been amazing. I don't know whether you saw my Facebook page yesterday but it's really exciting because this is a very, very special show. So let's just launch into it. Let's get started and let's go to your narcissistic story and what that was about.
Absolutely. So my narcissistic story, it has a lot of elements that are similar to a lot of other stories. And it's interesting because, of course, I'll go back and tell a little bit of the story, but these days it's quite hard for me to connect to, which is so different to earlier on when you're so in the story and fascinated by the story and like appalled by it and everything else. Whereas now it just feels to me like it was a different lifetime ago. It's like something that happened to someone else. But I know that some details are really important. So I met the narc on the street actually in Melbourne. So he started speaking to me and there was this like instant connection, instant familiarity, and we went out on a date and soon after that, and I just really thought this guy was great. Like he just swept me off my feet. Like it was that full just presented like he was the soulmate. And on paper, it just looked so perfect, you know. It was probably everything I'd ever thought that I would love to have in a partner, and that's how he showed up. And, you know, I was just all in. And like so many of these stories, you know, it started very quickly. Within a fairly short space of time, we were moving in together. Within the space of a year, we bought a property together. And I just allowed myself to get swept along. And any kind of doubts or reservations or question marks that came up, I swept them aside and I assumed they were my own blocks and that they were my own limitations and that I needed to work on that. And ironically, I'm a kinesiologist now, and meeting that person really set me off on that journey because that's why I went to see a kinesiologist in the first place. Is like these things were starting to come up and I thought it was me.
So I went to that, Kerry? How often did we do that? That we had those, because I think when we were trying to do our life cognitively, we're always second guessing ourselves rather than listening to our body and our gut. And then down the track, it was like, yeah, that was off. My body was really telling me that, but nobody had taught me to listen to my body before this time.
That's right. And like if you listen to your body's telling you something's not feeling right. It doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel like comfortable, but you're just like, no, that must be me. So, you know, this swept along and then I decided to study kinesiology. So I became very absorbed in that, and I think in some ways quite distracted from maybe some of the other things that were going on. The narc I was with, the challenges ended up being money related. There's often like a bit of a theme, or then maybe there ends up being multiple themes in some situations, but that was the real, the way the issues really presented, certainly early and then much more significantly later. But overall, I still thought I was in a good relationship. Got married after we'd been together 5 years, and it was really after that the relationship started to take downward turns and all sorts of things started to happen. Started to present with really high levels of anxiety and depression, which I realised later were really connected to all of this money drama that was going on behind the scenes that I wasn't really privy.
So just he had depression, he had anxiety, yeah.
That's right. So I was thinking I was dealing with somebody who was going through some mental health challenges, and here I am, a kinesiologist. Well, I can deal with that. I can help.
I can fix that. I'm a healer. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's right. And, you know, there were different money things coming up. Then this person started losing jobs, ended up losing 3 jobs over the last 2 years of the relationship. And it was over this time that it was becoming apparent, like, things aren't adding up. Like, I'm a person who I learn from my mistakes. I am always trying to grow and better myself and that kind of thing. And I was so perplexed at what was going on here. Like, why were we repeating these kind of cycles, and why weren't things getting better? And I think I was still holding so tightly to that early vision I'd had of what I thought the relationship was going to be. So even though the evidence was mounting that that was not the situation that I was in, and we weren't creating the life that I had really imagined for myself and for us, I couldn't reconcile that. I was like determined and just kept on thinking, what more can I do? How else can I support? What needs to happen next? And continuing just thinking, no, there'll be a new beginning. And there were often, as there are, signs of these new beginnings, which I was just so happy to believe in. And then they just never were sustained. And for the last, particularly over the last year, and it probably did start before that, because I guess it's the frog in the water example. You know, if you're thrown into boiling water, you'll jump out straight away. But when that water progressively starts heating up, you don't realise exactly what you're in. And that certainly was the case for me. So, you know, there was mental and emotional abuse that was really becoming quite prevalent. But it was in forms, as I know it often is for people who go through these experiences, in forms that I didn't readily recognise. Or it was targeting, you know, vulnerabilities and weaknesses even that I knew I had. And so I would, you know, just get stuck in defending myself rather than just thinking, I don't need to deal with this.
And it's so true. When it's our gaps, when it's that stuff that we haven't healed yet, we don't like it, but we tolerate it, and there's a familiarity and a normal about it that we're trying to survive, but we don't know how to get out of it at that point.
That's right. And I was incredibly confused, and I just felt like I was in a total washing machine, and I couldn't piece it all together. I couldn't really understand exactly what it was that I was dealing with. So I suppose I got stuck on that, trying to understand what I was actually dealing with, rather than, really looking at where I was at and did I actually want this for my life. And the reason why it ended in the end was because the money stuff all came to a head and became exposed in several different explosions, we'll call them, where I really, you know, it came to light. I was given information, people came forward, and it was exposed for everyone at the same time, myself, family, friends, work, also, you know, so it was a very dramatic expose of the situation, and it was incredibly shocking to realize that's where I was. And at that point I knew I had to leave, because the behavior towards me also escalated, of course, once it was exposed and once the lies or whatever couldn't work anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you end up, Kerry, as a result of all of this?
Well, as I left, I mean, you start to realise how you actually feel. And like instantly I felt relieved to be out and out of the daily chaos, and it's just ongoing onslaught face to face. But of course I was still receiving a great deal of contact, etc. And drama in that form. So it was I had panic attacks, post-traumatic stress symptoms. I was having adrenaline surges. Extremely fatigued, but then also extremely adrenalized. And initially, I was just in go mode. There was so many decisions to make, so much to do, so much contact, both from the individual, but also everyone else, you know, who had different reasons to contact me. So it was a very dramatic, traumatic time, and I could see that I was a person who was traumatized, and I was becoming aware about the fact that I had experienced these forms of abuse. And it was so clear once I was out, and once I started telling people who were close to me about what I'd been dealing with, that really created a lot of clarity and, you know, contributed to the trauma in some ways as well, of just the recognition of that.
Yeah. And I know, you know, in your situation, you know, when you discovered where he'd been getting money sources and the debt, and, you know, there was black market stuff involved, and like a lot of the narcissistic stories where it's just a crazy stuff, and you're exposed to worlds and things and behaviours that you just never thought you'd be involved with. I know with myself, you know, the court cases, the police, the stuff is, you know, it's, and the lies and things, it's shocking what you
That's
discover.
right. It's just, yeah, that, as you say, that disbelief that this is what I'm in, and then that not just being able to walk away from it because you're still living it, and it's the time it can take to extricate yourself when there is so much enmeshment. And to be honest, I felt still incredibly responsible for this person and even their survival, which intellectually makes no sense, but that healer side of me had been so deeply activated by this point, by this person who was presenting in such a broken down form.
Yes, and it's so much about the replays of, if I can fix and heal this, well, then I can be safe and loved.
That replayed all throughout, I think.
It's big. So, Kerry, what had you tried to do to get well?
So I moved away from the situation straight away. I moved interstate, and I moved my business online and invited my clients to continue to work with me via Skype, so I could physically get away from the craziness and drama of that situation. And then I started to see a counsellor quite early who was great, but I was still dealing with the unfolding drama. And even when I would see her, I was highly adrenalized. So there was only so much that she was able to help me with at that time, because I was still in the telling of the story and the living of the story. I wasn't yet at a place where I was able to heal, and I was very aware of that. I knew that it was, my healing time hadn't yet arrived, and I did know as well that as the contact started to cut down, which of course didn't just happen, I had to make that happen. As that started to happen, I knew I was going to feel worse, and of course I did.
Yes, and a lot of things were up in the air for you, as they are, because Kerry and I did 10 sessions together, as well as her being an art member, which we're going to talk about. But,
yes.
And I know that, like a lot of people, and like I was for a long time too, that when we're stuck up in the, well, I've got my life in here, I've got my money, I've got my resources, I'm tied up in this, I don't have settlements yet, it's a big thing to
That's right.
ourselves to, because we're really adrenalized by all of that stuff initially.
That's right. There was a property, had been paying the mortgage on that property for some time, was still continuing to pay it for a long time after I left, with that person still in the property. And
the same thing. Yeah,
you look back,
losing the house anyway. I did the same thing. No.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. And you look back now, and it's life tax, right? But
sure.
At the time, you can't quite believe that you're dealing with that situation.
No, and you're trying to do the right thing. They're not doing the right thing, so even though you're not in the property, you're doing the right thing. Like all good codependents
that's right.
do.
Exactly.
We do the right thing. So when did you discover that he was a narcissist, and what happened around all that time?
Well, there was a lot of speculating from me and others about what it was that was actually going on. It was, highly extreme, and a lot of people becoming involved, and psychologists and priests and all sorts of different people. And I did send a crisis intervention team, assessment team, around to the property a couple of times, because I was so worried and concerned about what was going to happen because of the way this person's psychological and mental state was. And I said, I thought it was bipolar. I thought it was schizophrenia. I had no idea, of course. And they said, no, it's not. And when I said, well, some people have raised the word narcissist, the woman just said, you might want to look into that. And I continued to look around, but I found the information about narcissism was not quite complete. And it wasn't until I discovered narcissistic personality disorder and I found it in a Google search, I found a slideshow. And when I watched that, it was just all the lights just came on. Like, that is my relationship. That is exactly what I have been through and what I'm going through. And at that point, I said, I need to find somebody to work with who specializes in this area, because this is unlike anything I have ever dealt with. And at that point, had never even heard of, I didn't know of anyone who'd been through this kind of situation. Yes. Now I know lots of people, but at that time it was extremely new to me.
And you've been seeing it a lot in your clients too, when you're like encouraging.
Once the light went on.
Yes.
Yeah, I attracted certainly a lot of clients who presented with those kinds of relationships, all those relationships in their past. And yes, I'm very quick to attune to that. So yes, and then a couple of days after I put out that intention, I need to, find somebody. A friend sent me your website, Melanie, and I, downloaded the free ebook straight away, read the checklist of the type of person who can tend to find themselves in this kind of relationship, and tick, 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 that's me, just described right there. It was me, described right there. And I bought NARP straight away. Like, the day I found it, I was like, this is exactly what I need. Someone has gone to the trouble of creating a healing program, and I just resonated so strongly with your message and the self-responsibility and that healing and up-leveling. I just thought, someone's gone to the trouble of creating this, I am going to do it. So I started straight away, and then I continued to do your program nearly every day, sometimes multiple times in a day for, I would say, at least 4 or 5 months. It was critical, absolutely critical to my healing journey. And I also booked in those sessions with you straight away as well. I was one of the lucky last batch, I think, to get to work with you privately. And I started off with initial 5. You have no idea how long this healing process is going to take. I booked in 5, and then as soon as I started that, I booked in another 5. It's like I realized there is so much activated here and so much to uncover here. And it was an incredible journey. And I always say to people, that was the key to my healing, is the work that I did there.
And you were so dedicated. And I love that about us alpha A-type women, that we get the job done. There's a lot of people in this community, and a lot of people that are codependents are like us too. We're intelligent, we're hardworking, we apply ourselves. We might have been doing personal development for years and putting in a ton of effort into ourselves, and we've had those beliefs, well, if I just get myself right, my life's going to go right. Like, we're not lazy people. But what's really good is when we decide that I am going to do whatever it takes to free myself to get a great life, we'll put in the effort. And there's lots of people like you, Kerry, and the community that have really done that with NARP and had the amazing results.
That's right. And that is 100% exactly what you just said, was what I said to myself. You've been through such a traumatic, challenging time, and it's gone on for such a long time, and you deserve to be happy. And I just decided I'm going to do whatever it takes to create a great life for myself moving forward. Like, this is not how this story ends.
Oh, I love that. I've got goosebumps all over. Truth speaking truth. Powerful. Right. That's amazing. So what did you find out about the inner programs when you started working the NARP modules that had been unconsciously generating painful relationship experience?
So I found out that I defaulted to these feelings of helplessness and powerlessness when in a challenging situation or when in a challenging relationship. And that just kept on coming up time and time again from all different ages. You know, when we go back and you do the healing shifts and you're finding that time, all different ages in this lifetime and so many past lifetimes of that. I found out that I felt like really worthless. Like it was at a really deep level, and it was, you know, in that way that on the surface, consciously, I would have told you and I believed I had worth, but I had to face up to the reality that my behaviours had not reflected that I had any self-worth, really, not to the degree I needed. And it just became, so clear. That came up again and again and again. I'm worthless. I don't deserve. I hadn't felt I deserved more, and I co-created what I actually thought I deserved, which was majorly shocking to find that out. I had uncovered this belief as well that as a woman, I don't have power in relationships, that I would give away my power, and that men could overpower me. So I could hope that they would treat me well, or I could hope that I'd made a good choice. But once I was in it, and especially like once I was in love, that I could be, I could be manipulated or overpowered in some way. I found out that I was scared of life. I was scared about things that could happen to me or situations I could find myself in, and that didn't work out so well for me.
It all comes to reality, and it's so
I created some extremely, scary situations that I found myself in, and I just had this fear of the worst. I hoped for the best. I tried to manifest the best, but because I wasn't, really listening to what was actually going on and connecting to what was actually going on, the worst was what I was in co-creation with, I guess, in a lot of ways. I really felt like I was fundamentally flawed. Like I thought, look, I've got these faults and these weaknesses, and if I've got faults and weaknesses, I'm exposed and I can be attacked for those. So that was my focus, I guess, to try and eliminate all imperfections and to be increasingly like perfect or increasingly strong or whatever it was. It's like I need to try and be better so that I can be treated better, rather than I just expect to be treated well no matter what. I felt like I wasn't in control of my life, and that I had to try and get control in some way. But it was, other people were in control. It wasn't me. And similar to that, I saw other people in my life as being gatekeepers, and they to what I wanted, and they could determine whether I did or didn't get what it was that I wanted.
Huge. So many people are going to be relating. I just want to translate a bit, because this is your stuff, Kerry, was my stuff. And I know that when we connected in healings, I'm like, oh my gosh, this girl is just reflecting the stuff that I've been working with. The stuff about not being safe in life, and I think for both of us, through Narcissists, we got to meet our biggest fears on financial security levels. You lost everything too. You lost everything in that relationship. So did I. We were terrified about security. Can I survive in the world? I need a big, strong man to look after us, but because I can't generate my own life and my own safety and my own security, I'm helpless. And then I'm trying to choose a big, strong rock, but what I'm actually getting is a hammer that's going to bring up all my fears that I've unhealed for me. And I love what you said about perfection, that we've just got to try and be better, and we've got to try and improve, and we've got to look better and sound better and be smarter and be more capable. And our inner programs were, well, I'm defective, I'm not okay. We were trying to cover it up, and it didn't matter what we were doing and striving for to try and cover up those programs until we actually healed them at that deep core inner level. They were going to keep presenting.
So true.
Huge, right? Huge. Huge. So what, because your life now, this is why there's been so many comments on Facebook, because do you know why? Because so many people read that and they're like, I want that. I want that. And I love a comment one lady wrote where she said, I just want to keep and hold, it was something like, I want to keep and hold everybody accountable here, that we don't want to be a codependent society where we're thinking that we get those things and then we're happy. And this
Yes.
is, and we've talked about this many times, that it has to be a state. We think that, we've all thought, once I get stuff from the outside in, well, then that's going to create my state of emotional freedom and happiness.
Absolutely.
But the truth is, we have to shift ourselves to emotional freedom and happiness, which is unconditional on what we are or are not receiving, and then the good stuff just comes.
Absolutely. And I stayed stuck in that space for ages because, I had this property that didn't sell. I mean, it went on for 10 months before it sold and settled. I was staying with my parents. I was like 36, I think, at this point. I was just like, this is like not my life. It's not supposed to be my life, but here I am. It is my life. And, I felt like, I need this to happen. I need the house to sell so I can move on. And part of my lesson was I needed to learn to be okay in myself with nothing of who I thought I was. I didn't even have my possessions. They were still back in the property. I couldn't get them back for some time. I had to leave my friends. I had to leave the way my business was, my face-to-face business of working with clients that I'd built up for 5 years. I did. I felt like I'd lost everything. And I was like, well, if I could only just hurry up and get started with the next bit, I can just leave all this behind. But yeah, I had to learn, no, you're actually fine now. Like, you can be fine right now. And I think life kept me there because I had to learn that. If I hadn't learned that, I might have gone on to just recreate things in a different way of like, well, life's better now because I did get to move on. Whereas I had to feel better first in my instance. And so, over time, of course, the property did sell, and that I didn't get money from that, but I was freed up financially from having that commitment. And then I was able to move into a place by myself to rent, which I'd never imagined, myself doing, of being independent enough to be able to, live in my own space. And here I am in my own space, and I've got my business, and that's sustained. And I've got incredible clients who came along, and continued to work with me during that time. And, my business has flourished since as well. And I really was starting from scratch in a new city that I hadn't lived in, even though I grew up in South Australia. I hadn't lived here for 15 years. And, just enjoying that though, saying, just enjoying the blessings of that and the stillness and the space, and knowing I can create whatever I want from here. And I'm happy now. I was not in any way thinking I need to meet somebody or I need anything to happen. It's like, this is amazing. And about a year after I left this relationship though, and I was, 3 months into living in my beautiful little apartment, I was ready to start meeting people. And I was kind of getting curious, and I'd read some articles you had written, Melanie, about online dating, and I found that kind of inspiring, like that idea of approaching it from this really empowered space. And I had to do a lot of work to help to shift the fears and the what ifs, which I think a lot of people go through, and to come into that space where I could really approach it from an exploratory, curious, learning space, and thinking, I've never done this before. I've never been in a position even of dating. I always used to meet partners very quickly. It snapped me up on the street, apparently. But I was like, no, this time I need to learn this. Obviously, this is not something like I excel in, let's be honest. And so I need to understand that this is a learning journey for me. And I need to really collect a lot of data here about what I do like, what I don't like, what works to me, learn to have lots of different kinds of conversations about, you know, what people want and what they're looking for, and to depersonalize that as well, and to understand everyone's looking for what they're looking for, and you can be choosy, you can wait, and you can want what you want.
Yes, and completely different, isn't it? When you take it as every single date that I'm going to go on is a growth experience, like life is working for me constantly and not to me. So no matter what, even if I get triggered and something comes up, well, then I get to up-level something, I get to grow, I get to speak up, I get to be honest, I get to implement a boundary.
Exactly. And, you know, I would write this about what I wanted, and I focused on how I wanted to feel. And I would, you know, if I met somebody and I liked them, you know, even if I knew that they weren't suitable for a relationship or we weren't compatible, I would still, like, I'd write down the traits they had that I did like and I did enjoy. So I just kept on building up this profile and this, you know, inventory, I guess, of like what it was that I do want and what I do want to feel. And do you know what wasn't on the list? What that person looked like, what kind of job they did, you know, none of the external things. I was really open to understanding that this person, you know, whenever I found them, I just thought, and the other thing was, I was like, gosh, I'm in Adelaide. Adelaide's a lovely city, by the way, but it's a relatively smaller city. And I just thought, I don't know, like, you know, is the person I'm looking for even going to be here? And I just thought, well, do you know what? I only need one. I'm only looking for one. It might take a while. It might take a few years. So I might as well just settle in and enjoy the experience I am having and enjoy the life that I'm having. And it was also, you know, that phase that I was in of the creating my new life. I mean, that was just one part of it. I was also developing new friendship circles. You know, I'm in a new city. And I was learning to create this really beautiful full life outside of my work, because that's the other place I used to hide. And where I hid in the relationship, actually, is by, you know, I was a total workaholic, loved my work, passionate about it, just directed all my energy there because that was what was going so beautifully well. So I needed to make sure I didn't revert to that kind of behaviour.
Goodness, I so relate. That's what I did too.
It's a trap. It can be a trap, and it's really things
that are working in your life that give you energy and peace. You can just, you're right, you can hide out in them.
Yeah, that's right. So it was clear that I mustn't be doing that. I must be creating a full, fulfilling life that, you know, I could really enjoy all of the elements, and I could be loving my life, and I was loving my life and enjoying it.
Just there, Kerry, when you were doing that, I'm sure you would have, like I did, you know, when you get out of like those comfort zones, of course you get triggers, you get stuff, and you need to up level them and heal them to release yourself onto a trajectory of expanding into areas that you never had.
Exactly. So I can, you know, I was using your goal setting module still. I still worked with different healers to work on different things that might come up, and to, you know, some of my patterns would still come up of trying to work with things or not having the conversation when I knew I should have. But the thing is, it never went very far. You know, I caught it like so fast. It was, you know, compared to the past. So anyway, 6 months or so into my dating like journey, I met the person who is now my partner. And it was quite funny because I mentioned, you know, this whole thing about being focused on how I wanted to feel. Well, this person on paper was nothing like who I thought I would actually end up with. So he was quite a lot younger than me. He was 7 years younger. He was tradie, so he kind of presented it. He's not even a tradie anymore, actually. He's an entrepreneur, but that's how he presented, and really Aussie, like sport, you know, just a really Aussie kind of guy. I was like, gosh, this is very different. But I just paid attention to the connection and the, you know, the way that we communicated. And it was just very clear that, you know, there was a very strong connection there, and that we could communicate about so many things, and that I noticed how I felt, and straight away, you know, it was like we were on the same kind of page and at the same phase in our lives, where we were only going to, you know, step into a relationship if we felt that it was going to be a great relationship. And for him too, he'd been through difficult situations in the past. And he said, you know, he hadn't really seen very many examples of the type of relationship that he was looking for. But he also had his own vision of what he really wanted. So we were both kind of checking to make sure that what we were experiencing was in line with what we wanted to really experience. And, you know, he says he manifested me. Like, he was very conscious and very deliberate. He's like, yeah, there were some things that, you know, weren't on your list. You didn't have trade on there, but everything I wanted you is all, that's you.
It's so gorgeous. And I love, Kerry, you made it your own soul. You know, this would have been the first time for you that you were in life feeling whole, feeling self-partnered, feeling full, feeling positive, feeling excited and happy within. You made it your own soul, and you were able to choose somebody from a soul heart level rather than from a disconnected brain mind level.
Totally. And I still stayed really conscious and just letting it unfold and checking in and testing. And I don't mean testing in like I'm just going to stand back and just see how you go. But I was, you know, I had the conversations to see what would happen. You know, I didn't shy away from those difficult things and those difficult conversations. I just kept on showing up because it's like, this is either going to be right, but if it's not, that's totally fine. Because I think in the past I was in so quickly without enough questioning to really check in. Are we on the same page? Are we wanting the same kind of things? Like, it's one thing to have great chemistry and connection, but do we envisage the same kind of life? And can we work together? Can we be a team, you know, in everyday situations? Because, you know, when you look back on those past relationships you might have had, usually those signs were there that person didn't.
Values weren't aligned. Values were not aligned. Like with narcissists, it's like you have all these things in common because narcissists just, you know, portray that. Oh, I love what you love. And, you know, but if you were to check in at that deep level and show up authentically and have those honest conversations, you would have found out very quickly your values are nowhere near aligned.
That's right. You would see inconsistencies, and you see the inconsistencies between the words and the actions very quickly if you're willing to.
Yes, but we weren't, of course, were we? But we thought if we showed up and we backed up those gut feelings of unease, we had that fear. Well, I'm going to be rejected, criticised, I'm going to be abandoned, or I'm going to be punished. All that young, unhealed childhood stuff. So we just shoved it down and made up a story in our head and ignored our gut and went along.
That's right. And look, in this relationship, even still early on, there was still triggers and sometimes where I would be very quick to jump on something and really check straight away. And over time, we just had to, both of us, say to each other, you know, we need to default to a different position and default to expecting the best because of who we are. We do both want the best for each other. So we need to create a new default rather than, you know, expecting the worst or being on guard in some way. So it was a real learning experience for both of us of learning to create this, you know, beautiful, loving, supportive, caring, thoughtful relationship. You know, just this week I've been in launch mode for a program that I run in my business, and you know, he's been making me dinner and looking after me and just so supportive. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry that I've been so busy. And it's like, it's fine. I'm so proud of you. You're doing so well. And, you know, it's all kind of swings and roundabouts. There's no point scoring or, you know, what about me or any of that. It's just really beautiful and easy.
And I love, you know, we've had another conversation about him that, you know, you're like this strong sort of, you know, successful woman, and in the past the narcissistic men were just really threatened by that and really tried to strip you down and didn't allow you to be that woman, whereas he loves it. He
absolutely loves me exactly as I am, and loves the strength, and loves the, you know, different types of success he sees or things like that. It's just like, that's great. And he's so strong and, you know, powerful in himself, but it's a true strength where you don't need to overcome somebody else, or you don't need, obviously, to put them down. You can just be in your power. So it's actually just two people who are just balanced and in their power, just enjoying each other's company rather than trying to project or draw off each other, or, how it goes.
Love that. I love that. And when we accept ourselves rather than those old stories and programs, I'm not enough of this, or I'm too much of that, or, I'm unlovable the way I am, or I'm defective. When we actually get really comfortable with our uniqueness and our quirkiness, and, I've had partners in the past that said, Melanie, you're way too much, you're too passionate. And, the people in my life who adore me, adore that about me, because
That's
I've
right.
learned to adore and embrace that about me.
That's right.
Get into that.
That's right. And that's exactly it. You need to learn to really celebrate and acknowledge that in yourself. I remember one day, earlier on, I think you said to me, it was just a bit tongue in cheek, but it's like, gosh, you analyze things like straight away. I said, you know what? That's exactly who I am. That's what makes me great at my job. And that's probably what's made me successful. And it's just who I am. It's like, yeah, fair enough then. Never said it again. It's that thing, when you own it in yourself and you're like, yep, this is who I am and I am me. And of course, we're growing and developing and changing all of the time, but I'm also fundamentally who I am, and you need somebody who can see you for exactly who you are and meet you there and just love that. Love all of it. So, it's the relationships developed and evolved. And then earlier this year, my partner moved in with me. And not so long after that, we decided we would like to try and have a baby. And I'm now pregnant. So it's been a very exciting time. Thank you. And this little baby soul was very vocal and very, so much beautiful synchronicity. Like, I had a lot of different visions and dreams. I knew when I was going to conceive even. It's a really clever little baby, I think. That's why every mother thinks their child's smart. But anyway, it's a child who knows exactly what it's doing and where it wants to be. Anyway, it knows it's ready to come. So now we're in that phase of getting ready for that and enjoying that part of the journey that we are on.
Gorgeous. And the photos of you guys, oh my gosh, the chemistry, the love, the wholesomeness. And he is gorgeous inside and out. He is hot. He's just, and he is. You're both hot. You're gorgeous. You're just this pin-up thriver couple. I love it.
Thank you.
And you divine. Now, and I know, Kerry, when we started working, 2 or 2.5 years ago, I have to say, you look younger, healthier, more beautiful than what you did back then.
Thank you. So many people since I've been through my healing journey have said, people tell me these days, I think I look a lot younger than what I actually am. I'm 39, and people are, often surprised. People are often surprised these days. But, whereas when I was in that past relationship, I developed adrenal fatigue, I developed digestive issues, I developed reproductive issues, and all sorts of things. And, my health is great now, and feel pregnant easily, and, all those kinds of things. But I do want to make a point on that as well, back to your point earlier, that I don't want people to think, oh gosh, she's, so lucky and she's got all those things and now she's happy, because that wasn't the order of events. The order of events was I did the healing work to feel happy inside and to feel really content and spacious and peaceful and safe within myself. And from that point, I knew that I was creating a great life. I was not attached actually at all to what that would look like. I had really wanted to have children when I was in that past relationship. I let that go, actually. And I knew, with the age I was.
In our healings, that was a sticking point for a while, was that trauma of what if I'm not going to, have children, and we, you had to do a lot of work around that.
I really did. And I was very angry about that for some time, at feeling like I had had that choice taken away from me, that I'd wasted all of this time. Now, at the end of the day, the only person I was angry with was myself, but that was what I really had to heal and let go of. And I really had to come, or I did come to a space where I understood that a beautiful, happy, amazing life was completely possible and non-negotiable actually for me, but it could take many different forms, and it might involve children if that was in my life plan, or it might not, and that would also be equally amazing. And that, I might attract a great partner at some point, but that might take a long time to find what I was looking for, and that was also fine. It's like, instead of there just being this one pathway that is going to create happiness for me, and come hell or high water, I'm like heading there and no one's stopping me, and I'm forcing, pushing, trying, there we go, let's go. Instead, it just opened up. And, I these things that I have created, like I've got this beautiful partner, my beautiful business, and I'm going to be having a child as well. But yeah, that's just all byproducts of this life, beautiful life that I was going to have no matter what.
Totally. And let's have that lack of attachment to it. You meet a guy who's a plumber, like the old Kerry would have gone, no, I don't think so. He's not successful enough, he's not this enough, he's not that enough. And then, your guy had on the side this online business that has gone gangbusters, and he's become this internet sensation in like golfing apparel, who's getting, he makes my hits on YouTube look stupid. He's just kicking butt. And all of a sudden he's become this internet entrepreneur. You're now branching into what I love. You're stepping into mission and purpose and your unique contribution to the planet. So, Kerry is doing her own manifesting course, which is based on the principles that she shifted into, which is about, the inner alignment and non-attachment and the power through you and all that space and manifestation in your cells, which is the stuff I love. So on the blog, I'm going to be putting up details of Kerry's course for people that are in, because look, she's a poster child. She's got the hot partner, she's pregnant, she's got these just gorgeous, amazing life surrounded by, I'm a friend with Kerry on Facebook, and, her family, her friends, her life is just, you're not the woman I met 2 years ago. She's up leveled.
Yeah. That's right. And, the business side of it has been another blossoming aspect, and, up leveling all of that programming and beliefs around what's possible for me and what I can create. And someone on my Facebook page said yesterday, just when I actually mentioned this interview, said, I love your self-belief, Kerry. I said, you know what? I think it's less about self-belief and it's actually more about just not stopping myself and not overthinking and just getting out of my own way and just, being in my truth, and then seeing the opportunities and possibilities that arise, and I just keep stepping in. And yeah, my Align and Attract program is a part of that. It's quite interesting because when I was working with you, you obviously must have been coming to the end of your time working one-to-one, which because of Bubba, that's where I'm at right now as well. And my business is evolving to being more based on this group program, which I initially created well before our work together, but naturally because of all the healing work I did, when I recreated it last year, I created it from a completely different platform and energy space. And, we've brought through lots of beautiful practitioners and healers and coaches and creatives who are really wanting to get into alignment. And, I was able to do that in my business beautifully right from the start. And then when it came to relationship stuff, that's when I worked with Melanie.
Yes. So many of us. There's so many amazing, creative, incredible, talented people in my community, in the MTE community, who have made so many things in their life work so well. But, we're all here together because we've had the relationship challenges.
Exactly. That's right.
Well, you've broken through those just incredibly. So, Kerry, to finish off, what would you like to share as your final words to people?
Really, if you haven't started on the healing journey, and by that I really mean NARP, I think like now's the time. I think sometimes we can come up with excuses and reasons, and it's too hard, or I don't have the money, or this and this and this. But once you get to the point where you decide, I am worth, I'm worth feeling better, and I'm worth investing in, and I just want it, and I want to create that beautiful life for myself. A lot of that kind of excuse type of stuff can seem to fall away, and solutions arrive and possibilities emerge, and you commit the time. It stops being too difficult or too hard, or I don't know when I'm going to be able to do that. You just decide, I'm going to do it. I used to do my NARP work out walking, or in bed before I'd fall asleep at night. Like, you find the time to fit it in. And I think if you invest that time and that energy, don't invest the time and energy in researching, learning. You can obviously learn so much from Melanie, but don't stop there. Just do the healing work, and don't just stop by doing it a few times. Keep doing it. Like, if I'd stopped after a month and just thought, oh well, I'm a bit better now, that's good, move on. We want to move on. I wouldn't be where I am now, because there still would have been so much that was still kind of fractured and incomplete and unhealed and all the rest of it. So just decide you're worth it. And yeah, you get tired of going back and, oh gosh, it's another past life, gosh, it's another time I'm this age, I've been here so many times before. You feel like that sometimes, and then you come back around to, do you know what, if I have to come here another 100 times, absolutely, and that's going to help me to get where I need to go, that's what I'm going to do. You just do it. And you decide you're worth it.
Yeah, I think that's the most important message. And when we say, you know what, I've had enough, I am not doing this again. And I am not going to live life with this trauma and this pain in my body that I'm battling to survive every day of my life. I don't want to live like that. I want to be happy.
I just want to be happy, and this is a pathway to it, and I'm going to do what it takes. So yeah, once you get there,
yay!
Back.
So, Kerry, we're going to put up this video on Thriver TV, and we're going to put it on the blog. So if people would like to ask you questions personally about your journey, or even about your course or whatever, are you happy to answer them?
Totally fine. Yeah, you can also find me on my website at Awaken Kinesiology, but for the questions specific to this, definitely keep them on Melanie's blog.
Yeah, gorgeous. That is beautiful. Thank you, Kerry, so much for coming on, and thank you for being a Thriver poster child, you and your gorgeous partner Sean. And I'll just have to fly up to Adelaide to see you when you have your baby.
Come and visit, and yeah, it's going to be beautiful.
Oh gosh, it's gorgeous. Thank you, darling. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, bless. And bye-bye, everybody. And I hope you really enjoyed the show. Bye-bye.